And we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from in the world. Welcome to another High Vibe conversation. I'm your host, Shel Shapiro. This week, we are talking about people first language. And, well, before that throws me off completely, what can I say about people first language? I think what's coming up for me is how do we refer to ourselves and how do we want to be respected and acknowledged? And what are some things that happen when people acknowledge us the wrong way? How does that make us feel triggered? So I have a lot of triggers. I think that's what's coming up for me right now. And certainly they can get pushed very easily if I'm not careful, if I'm not myself. And I also recognize that I shit on myself a lot. I shit on myself and I put myself in that disrespect situation. So when we're talking about people first language, which I know other people, you will all hear from different sides of this, and I probably have the least background experience to talk about this um, expertly. But for me, it's a matter of like remembering to respect myself first, so that others can respect me in that way back. It's the way that I show up for myself, and I do a really bad job of it because I put everybody else first before myself. So for me, it's about tweaking that a little bit to remember to show up as well. Um, I'm going to pass it on to the rest of these lovely ladies that are joining me today, and hopefully they can add to the conversation and not shit on themselves as much as I do. So I'm going to jump in. Linda, what do you got for us on people first language?
Well, the first time I ever heard about people first language was through my special education connections, and somebody had like written in a newsletter from some organization about it, and they were talking about not putting someone's disability before the person. So like instead of saying, and the doctors were always using terms like ADHD child, or you'd hear ADHD kid. And in the work that I did, I was actually pulling kids out of labels biochemically. So, there were various reasons why a child was displaying hyperactive, inattentive behavior. And once you pull them out of the label, if they were an ADHD kid, then what are they now, right? So a child with ADHD, you take the ADHD away, and there it is. There's the child that you always had. So it always frustrated me labeling symptoms, if you will, that way. And then you know, when the whole autism thing came to the fore and everybody started learning about that, including special ed teachers, as it wasn't a thing and a known thing, then that population grew up, became adults, and they do, a lot of them prefer to be labeled like autistic adult or autistic in general, not someone with autism. So it really boils down to, what do you prefer? And I just find that so fascinating, and I'm really glad to know that the autism population in general has a different view. So we can all just boil it down to, what do you choose to be called? And this isn't like about people first language, but I was in I always refer to as a starter marriage of 33 years. Like, I had kids with that last name. I wrote a book with that last name. I kept that last name, and I just attached it to my new husband's last name. So Vetras-Nichols. That's where that comes from. And I didn't catch too much heat for that, but it's like, who does that? And I just did what I wanted to do. So I like your concept, Shell, of, you know, what is it? Set the precedent for what you want, and then other people, make sure they're responding accordingly, right?
Yeah. And as you were talking about that, and I know you're talking a little bit more related to um, diagnoses or misdiagnoses and calling people things in terms of their those whatever those labels are. Um, as you were talking about that, I was thinking, well, I definitely label myself as an anxious person. Now, I've never been like formally diagnosed as like ADHD or like probably am or self-diagnosed by many standards. But I'm what was coming up for me was like a holy crap, like if I don't want people to like think of me as only being an anxious person or as a perfectionist or as a people pleaser or even as a helper. Like I shouldn't put that as like at the beginning of who I am because it's not all that I am. And so when I think about how I describe myself, changing that narrative too can help shift that conversation about how other people um, call me or relate to me and think of me. And yeah, that's part of the shitting and shitting on myself is the way that I describe myself when I think about like my attributes. Yeah, that it was coming up like really hardcore, especially with the anxiety and the people pleasing. So yeah, I'm gonna work on reframing that a little bit. Stina, I'm gonna head on over to you a little bit earlier than usual in the conversation. What's coming up for you when we talk about people first language?
Well, I'll be the third to echo that the core of this conversation is respecting other people and accepting fully who they are, how they define themselves, and what feels good to them because we never can fully understand their experience firsthand, especially as able-bodied people, especially as white people. There are going to be so many groups of people that are disabled or minorities that we cannot fully understand their experience. So defaulting to the person that you're talking about or the group of people that you're talking about is always the right option. It's never the better option to say, but this is how I see you, or this is how I want to refer to you, because it turns into gaslighting. I mean, that's just like a linguistic gaslighting. No, this is how I will be referring to you instead. And I read something just yesterday that was gave the example of, is it chocolate milk or milk with chocolate in it? And I thought that was funny. Um, and in my experience, like I'm gonna bring in and add the topic of pronoun use into the conversation as well, because that's something that's pretty current. It's something that we're seeing become, I would say, more mainstream. It's something that people are talking about, acknowledging, and incorporating into professional life. And we're just seeing that thankfully being infused, but we're also seeing still pushback and people who don't want to, use someone's proper pronouns. And the thing about that pushback to me is that it ignores the fact that we're already practicing this in other ways. And by that, what I mean is when you meet somebody and I say, "Hi, my name is Stina." I have gotten my whole life, "Is it really Christina?" No, it is not. We like, there are people who will already question your name, but then at the same time, they're not saying, "Are you sure that your name isn't Amber? Are you sure that your name isn't Ashley? Because you actually look like an Amber or an Ashley to me, not a Stina." Or, they're not saying, "Oh, Jenny, well, is that your middle name? Is that your real name? Is that the name on your birth certificate?" who gave you that name? Why did they give you that name? Why do you use that name? Like there's not this interrogation or this temptation to question when someone introduces themselves to you, what their name is. I also grew up with nicknames that I don't like. I didn't like them growing up, and I don't particularly like them when they're used even now as an adult. And one of them was Stinka. Like, what child wants to be called a nickname that sounds like you stink? It's really unpleasant. And so I remember the like discomfort of that and feeling like the adults around me weren't being sensitive to or even checking in with me to see how that name was growing with me, to see how it felt to be called that. And so with my kids, I have a child that's given name is Glory Ann. Well, they like glow, period. Don't want to be called Glory Ann. I, as their mother, I'm not like, well, I gave you this name and I will be calling you Glory Ann, and that's that, because it's not my name. And I've also gone through the process of changing my name through divorce, and kind of as Linda was talking about, there's so much fluidity in how we define ourselves, how we name ourselves. And it feels so good to have other people gratefully acknowledge those things when they change. So whether you're meeting somebody for the first time who has pronouns that you're not accustomed to using, or it's someone that who, informs you that they now use other pronouns, it's not a discussion, it's not a debate, and it's not something you need to apologize for or make a big deal about it, because that turns the focus back to you instead of keeping the focus on them. And it's very appropriate to say, thank you so much for telling me. Put it in their contacts on your phone. You can add, notes to contacts. You can keep a list of it. Those little things can really show somebody, I see you, I hear you, I honor you, I respect you. And and then if you're corrected at any point, to also just graciously take that in stride. Thank you so much for correcting me, and then continue. Not, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I just, it's so new to me. And like, no defense, no disclaimers. Thank you so much for correcting me, and move on. And I'll just add one little tidbit that I found really helpful. If you have somebody in your life that you've known for a long time that does change the pronouns that they use, it can be really helpful to go back through pictures of that person that you have and practice having thoughts about that person, and practice talking out loud just about the picture. Oh, look, they're at the beach. Oh, look how cute they are. And do those things so that you can start to practice it and really like remind yourself of how that person wants to be talked about. So those are my little tips and tricks and thoughts about honoring people's identity and their presence.
Yeah, thank you, Stina. I love your tips. They're very like helpful, and people can implement them at any of those levels at any point. And they're so simple that they should not feel like a burden to like change or like practice, because it's about making sure that we're showing up for each other and ourselves at the same time, but putting the other people in a comfortable space around us too, so that they don't have to feel like they don't get to be themselves just because you've labeled them a different way. The other thing that I'm recognizing as you were sharing your tips is when we mispronounce names, which happens so often. So it's not just like people questioning, well, was your full name, is your name Stina? Is your full name Christina? Like, or any other variation? Like, my full name is Michelle. And you know how many, that sounds like such a mainstream name. I grew up around a lot of Michelles, but it gets mispronounced so often. You know what gets mispronounced even more than that? Shell. You know how many times I've gotten Shelly, Chalet, Chell, like, okay, whatever your dialect is, and I butcher people's names all the time, but I will ask how to pronounce it because I really feel bad and mortified when I get it wrong. So I think it's also a matter of like not being afraid to correct somebody when they pronounce your name wrong and not being afraid to ask how to properly pronounce it if you're not sure. I get people's names wrong all the time, but like I will work on it. And if I know that I'm still going to have trouble with it, I might caveat that and let the person know that I'm going to have trouble with it, but I'm working on it. So I think putting that out there too, to open the dialogue and not limit people to mispronunciations or like calling you something that like, you know, you're hearing it wrong. It's not hitting you the right way because it's not your name or how you say it. And just letting them continue to do it. Because that happens a lot too. And even when people call me the wrong name, sometimes I'm like, call me whatever you want. Actually, I do that quite a lot. Call me whatever you want. I'll still respond. And now hearing you talk, I'm like, I should stop telling that to people. I should stop saying, call me whatever you want. I'll still respond. Call me by my name. My name is Shell. And if you have trouble pronouncing that, put it in parentheses as Shell so that you know. That's even how I tell Google how to pronounce my name because even Google will get it wrong. So yeah, that's what's coming up for me when we talk about it in that context.
I love that you added that, and it reminded me of listening in on a group coaching call recording one time. The person hosting the call was calling people up, you know, to be like hot seat coached, and almost every time would say the name and like kind of fumble and, oh, I'm just not very good with names, and then you know the person would have gone, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I probably butchered that. And the amount of time that was taken up in the call from the inefficiency of how that was handled and the profuse apology and stumbling really grated on my nerves because I thought this could have been made much more simple. Hey, the first three letters of the name are blah, 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 you know, or, you know, last initial is S, and, you know, come on up and then say, could you please tell us your name? Repeat the name. Thank you so much. Beautiful name. What can I help you with? Like to proactively put into practice ways that we can do this that feel seamless and just like very respectful and clean, instead of it being like this kind of distraction, you know. Because if you have a unique name or you use pronouns that are not necessarily the ones people assume you use, it feels a little uncomfortable too when people like overemphasize your name or your pronouns. You start to feel like, okay, but like we're here for this other thing. So just, you know, get the name right, please. Let's move on.
Yeah. And it seems like something that should not take so much effort, but it does. And we get stuck there a lot. Make it easier for people too. I'm going to turn this into a slightly more tech savvy teachable moment for a second before I come back to being people first. But when you're on your LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn at the very top of your page gives you the opportunity to help people show up for you and get to know who you are and who you want to be. So you can take advantage of that by adding your pronouns right at the top of your profile. And you can take advantage of that by doing that 30-second audio clip. Like, especially if you have a name that's less common or more difficult to pronounce, or if people get it wrong all the time, even if it seems really simple, then like add that 30-second audio clip to let people know this is who I am, this is how you pronounce it, and then maybe also give them a call to action so that they know how to contact you. But yeah, just wanted to like take it there for just a second since we are on this platform. Dorit, what is coming up for you when we're talking about people first language?
You know, I was actually taken back to when I was very ill and not able to work because something happened that I didn't even know was a thing. I started getting problems when I met new people and they asked me, "What do you do?" And I didn't know what to answer because I didn't do anything. You know, we are so easily identified by our jobs. And that was not something that I had thought about ever. I mean, I was store manager and I was a beautician and I was, all those things. And all of a sudden, for 7 years, I didn't have any titles. And I got so depressed. I didn't want to meet people because I had to start explaining myself. I felt I had to explain myself. And say, well, I'm home now, I'm sick and I can't work, but I used to do this, and even sometimes I'm a professional dog breeder, just to shut things off, even though I have like 1 litter a year. so I mean, that really was a problem for me in those days, how we get identified by the job that we do. So that was what came up for me.
I love that you took it there. Because I tell my clients this all the time, that you are more than just your job title. And especially when that changes, right? Especially if you're switching careers or you're in the wrong career to begin with and you're still just figuring it out what it is that you want to do more of, what feels good. Like, you don't have to be just your job title. You don't even have to be your job title at all. Like, it could just be your job and that's it. And then you're somebody else completely when you're not that. So yeah, I thank you for bringing it there. And I'm curious, when people ask who you are and what you do now, what do you tell them?
First of all, if people ask me what I do, that depends, and I just want to know what they want to know, because I do a lot of stuff. I'm not just one thing. I'm magical. I can do a lot of stuff. So I don't want to start like, I'm an author, I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm a coach, so now I just get them back with another question. So what do you want to know?
That's a great place to start, right? Anytime I'm not sure like how to relate to somebody too, I ask more questions so that I can find that connecting thread. And so if somebody is not sure how to respond to that question, who are you and what do you do, or either one of those questions, anything in between, you can ask more questions so that you can better answer it. And I think that's okay, because you are magical and you do a lot of things and you don't do all those things all the time. And yeah, how you show up changes depending on what's called for, like, and who you want to be. So I love that. Thank you.
Well, actually, I'm the queen of my kingdom. So
you are. You're a magical queen of your kingdom. And the queen of your dogs.
Oh, that too. My dogs with this.
Yeah, plural. Whew. Linda, Stina, Stina, you gave us so many tips about little things that we can do to help put people first. Are there any things that we can do in our beyond the introductions to get used to like putting people first, or to remember to put people first? That sounds like a loaded question, but I just ask lots of those all the time.
I think overall it's learning to slow down and pay attention to what you're saying. Because I'll say that even changing a pronoun for somebody can feel challenging. Like, our brains, even if you even if you completely accept and love that person and are totally on board, like have no qualms about it, your brain still will produce incorrect language. Well, we all know that. You can't find a word for something, you misspeak, like it just happens. So slowing down and recognizing when we're using any language to talk about other people, and seeing those as opportunities. And even if you have used a nickname for somebody for a long time and never have asked them if they like it, or if, just you can open up conversations with people about how they like to be talked about, regardless to, it doesn't have to be just about pronouns or just about physical disabilities or mental conditions. Like there's so many ways that we can honor people with the way we talk about them. And I was just reminded another little example that I saw, also on an Instagram reel. There was a woman who teaches about death and dying, and I'm not sure if she's a death doula, but it has a little bit of the death doula kind of vibes. And she said, instead of saying somebody committed suicide, saying they died by suicide. So, even in death, there are ways that we can honor and, really validate someone's experience. Because committed suicide sounds like they committed a crime. It makes them a criminal unto themselves, which is really quite heartbreaking, rather than saying they died by suicide. And when I say it that way, it feels much more compassionate. I also even feel the grief of it more, because we can detach ourselves from things that are criminal, things that are different, things that are not us. But when we put people first, we connect and we can feel and have so much more empathy for the human experience that we each have.
Two things are coming up for me right now. One is, were you listening to the conversation that I had on Monday about with Miriam, Dr. Z, about suicide and mental health? Because we definitely said committed suicide a few times, and now I'm like, God, I wish I had better language to support that during that conversation. So I'm like, oh, you even without knowing that, it's taking me back to just this past Monday. The second thing that I'm thinking about is that goes back to how we pronounce people's names. And so I'm segueing a little bit to backtrack on the conversation. I had a boyfriend in college, maybe 10, 15 years ago, probably a little bit more than that. And I had mispronounced his name during the entire time that we were dating. And I had no idea. He never corrected me. We dated freshman year, and he did not correct me until about a year or two ago, because we still chat occasionally and keep in touch. And I was like, well, how come you never told me I was saying it wrong? And he never told me. I still feel bad, because I'm like, I was completely just not calling you something that is your name. I would have corrected it. I would have made the adjustments on my end to make him feel more comfortable. And so, yeah, I'm remembering that, and I'm like, yeah, people are not used to sticking up for themselves. So it just comes complete full circle to what I said in the very beginning about not standing up and respecting myself enough to articulate how I want to be treated and called. Linda,
The
I see
other thing,
you're off mute. What you got?
Yeah, thanks, Stina, for bringing up. Stina sent me that meme that's so good about the committed suicide, and I got to thinking, another thing we kind of do as a society is say, she lost the baby, and it's just like, wait, where's the blame there, right? And in special ed, the kids that did get labeled autistic, a million years ago, their moms were referred to as refrigerator moms. the reason the kids were behaving, you know, the reason they had autism is because they had very cold, frigid mothers. Like, what? So all this name calling, scary. My stepdad would call me Lydia. I never liked it, told him to, you know. So, and then you get caught up in like family, like, oh, it's just a joke. And like, you're supposed to be the good sport. And so something you don't like, you're going to get put down further and further and further just because you stand up for yourself too. Sometimes it just isn't fucking worth it.
I'm just all in my feels now. All up in there. Just where do we dive in from here? I don't know. I don't know if that's worth diving into on this particular conversation. Maybe we'll save that for another week, another high vibe chat. I feel pretty complete though about talking about people first language today. Do you ladies have anything more you'd like to add, or do you feel complete as well?
Did you get a message from Jenny? I can see I got a flashing mission. I can't get to it. I know she struggled with her computer and stuff for yesterday's live and took it to the phone. So I don't know. She's got kids around now using Wi-Fi too. So
yeah,
catch it in a minute.
It looks like she won't be able to make it back, but she'll see us next week for another conversation.
Okay,
and we hope you'll join us back here next week as well. We've got a guest coming on, I believe, and we'll be ready for another high vibe chat. So make sure to tune in on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And before I forget, we also have another high vibe conversation book coming out soon. So I want to make sure that is on everybody's radar because these conversations are worth having and we hope you are enjoying them. We want to bring them to you in many more formats to come. And so I just want to put it out there. Stay on the lookout for it. Be ready. It's coming your way soon. Until next week, we're going to say bye for now. This has been a high vibe conversation with the high vibe women with heart. So